the civilians of the 1860s. We are going to show you what they would have used in their homes, what they would have worn, what the children would have played with, although the toys are very simple because the children did their chores. They had a lot to do around the house. But first we're going to talk to you about what they wore back then. A lady in the 1860s wore 7 layers of clothes. She wore that year round. It didn't matter what the temperature was. If it was 20, if it was 90, you wore 7 layers of clothes. Miss Sherry is dressed to go into town. She's dressed in a nice day dress. She put on her stockings and her shoes first, because once you put on a corset, it's harder to bend over to put on your stockings and your shoes. Then she would put on her drawers. She would put on her chemise. She would put on her under petticoat. She would put on her hoop, her over petticoat, her corset cover, and her dress. Now we know that this fashion was dangerous. It was only around for about 10 years. It was known that ladies died wearing clothes like that. They could be dragged to their death if they were getting out of a carriage and the hoop got stuck on the carriage and the driver took off. Didn't know that she was stuck. She could be dragged to her death. Lightning, there's metal in the corsets, there's metal in the hoop. You could be struck by lightning. Or if you're around fire, this could go up like a chimney. I am dressed to work around my home, so I am safer around fire. I do not have the big hoop on like Miss Sherry does, so I am dressed to work in my home. But still, 7 layers. So, the blue jeans and the t-shirt of the day. If you are in your home, who is the youngest one? Youngest child in the family? Anybody? Youngest? Are you the youngest?
I'm the youngest in my family.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, I'm
Okay.
the oldest in my family.
I'm the youngest. This is a chamber pot. Anyone know what a chamber pot is? Yep, it's pretty much the toilet of the 1860s. If you had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, it's outside. You might share a room with all your siblings. This would be used. The youngest one in the family, which would be me, would have to be the one that cleaned it. It was their job to clean it the next morning. If they were old enough and capable enough, they would be the ones to clean this. Now, it is gross, and we're going to stay with gross. These would be spittoons. You know what a spittoon is? You do spit in them. Chewing tobacco was big back then. We don't endorse that. But a lady's spittoon would have maybe matched her china. A gentleman's spittoon, not so much. It would be found also in saloons. We don't endorse that either. Or shops. They would find spittoons like this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you about Frozen Charlotte. This is a quick story about a young girl in the 1850s, so pre-Civil War, who wanted to go to the ball. The ball was 15 miles down the road, and her boyfriend Charles was coming to pick her up. She was dressed in a lovely ball gown. Her mother asked her to please put on a shawl. It was New Year's Eve. It was in Maine. It was blizzarding outside. Charlotte said, "No, I'm not going to wear a shawl. I don't want to wrinkle my dress. I want everyone to see how lovely I am. So, no, I'm not going to wear a shawl." Charles came, her boyfriend, to pick her up. "Charlotte, please, would you wear a shawl? It's very cold outside." "No, I'm not going to wear a shawl." So they took off in his carriage. He would check on her every few miles. "Charlotte, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine." A few miles later, "Charlotte, are you okay?" She said, "I'm starting to get a little cold." When they got to the ball, she had frozen. So, how weird this is, I can't describe, but they came up with these little frozen Charlotte dolls that would be baked into birthday cakes for girls' birthday parties to remind the girls to listen to their mother. So they also had little frozen Charles dolls if a boy did the same thing. Yes.
So was her skin so cold she
froze.
Like she actually ice? Was she?
Oh, I don't know about ice, but I know that she froze. So that's not a good thing, right?
Is it a true story?
It is a true story.
Did he die?
Yes, she did.
Oh.
We're going to let Miss Sherry talk to you about some kitchen things.
Okay, so on a lighter note, we're going to look at what did they have in their kitchen during the 1860s, which covered the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. As Miss Jackie said, I have a nicer dress on because I had hired help in my home, so I didn't have to cook. I could raise my children, I could do needlework, I could visit friends, go shopping. Each morning after I have all my 7 layers on, and I'm not hot by the way because we wear cotton, 100% cotton, which breathes unlike polyester or rayon today, where you guys are going to be hotter than I am pretty soon,
Yeah.
even with 7 layers on. So the first thing after I've got all my 7 layers on, I'm going to pin this to my belt, and you'll see that there's a scissors, which I would use for my needle point, snip off threads. There's a thread winder if I have to wind up a collar of thread if I'm doing some needle point. But the most important thing on this pin, which is called the chatelaine, is this key. I don't want this key to be out of my sight because where do you think it opens? What does it open?
Your house.
Nope. My house, I can leave it unlocked. It's totally safe.
Your shop. I know what.
What? Just shout it out.
Is it that picture thing?
Nope. This is the key to my spice cabinet. Back then, there was not a close grocery store to go to. So if I wanted to keep my coffee, my tea, my spices safe from maybe the neighbors are coming in to sneak a little bit, or my kids think they're going to have some coffee, nope, I got the key, they can't have it. You ordered your tea in a block, which came from China. So it lasted a long time. You just snip off a little bit, put it in a teacup with your server. This is why it's under lock and key, because this had to last me a long time. If I wanted sugar in my tea, I'd add some sugar from a sugar cone, which is how you would typically buy it. If you bought the big bulk sugar, you better have a barrel and a sifter. Flour sifter also sifts sugar to get the bugs out, because these barrels, the bugs got in them. How many of you have a blender or food processor in your house? Okay, I'm going to show you mine and see if you notice any difference. Okay? Here's my container. I'm going to put in whatever I'm going to blend or mix up. I have 2 of these whips. That's going to whip it. Whip it. I have a masher if I want to mash, like mashed potatoes. My salt is in my salt container that's hanging up on the wall. My food processor works just as good as what you have today. So we have some other things Miss Jackie's going to talk about. And so I'm going to get back to her.
If Charlotte would have lived, or before she went to the ball, they would have used one of these in her house. This is a courting candle. It's not just a regular candle. Back then they dated. It was called courting rather than dating. A young man would call on a young lady, come sit in her parlor. There were no movies. There was no place to go. There were no games to play, really. So the gentleman, maybe the father liked him. If they did, they would turn this candle up as far as it can go and light it. And when the candle burns down to the top, the gentleman has to go home. If they don't like this young man that's visiting their daughter, they make it shorter, which is a great idea to this day. If you had a young man coming, you might use one of these. Anybody know what this is?
Scissors?
Looks like scissors, doesn't it? Yes. It's a curling iron. They would also heat this in their fire, and they would then curl their hair and hope that they didn't get get it too hot. Something else they would heat over the fire. How many people iron?
Oh wait, no.
No, you don't iron?
No.
I
Only
iron.
for weddings.
There you go.
I only do it
These are irons back then.
small one.
This one is super heavy. They would put this in their fire. They would have 2 of them. One would be in the fire, the other one they would be using to iron. Then when that cooled off, they would get the one out of the fire and keep going. This one, you put charcoal inside, and you would iron with charcoal inside there. Even though I iron, I do not use these.
try it.
I should try it. That's a good point. If you are sick back then, down in bed for a number of days or weeks, they would use one of these to help you get nourishment or medicine. It's called an invalid feeder. And you could lay down, they would put your soup, your broth, whatever, your tea. Miss Sherry was gonna share her tea. We would put that in here. You could then lay down and take your medicine or your tea. One thing that they did back then, they wanted to be super pale, and they would use poison sometimes. Again, we do not endorse this. They would use poison, arsenic. They would take a little bits of arsenic to get themselves very pale. They would use arsenic in powders. This is a little powder shaker, like a talcum powder shaker they would use. That made them very sick, but they got the pale look. So
That's like what you don't want.
I know exactly.
Why would people do that?
I don't. It was the fad back then. The fashion. It was just what they did. Just like wearing the bonnet and the parasol to keep.
Isn't that going to get other people sick?
I would think so. Yes. This is called a pig. Again, if Charlotte would have had this, you put hot water in this, and you can put it in your bed, or you can put it in your carriage. Put your feet on it to keep yourself warm. So.
Charlotte, why would you not do that?
I don't know. What was she thinking? We also have some toys that the kids used back then. If you want, you can come up and look. Do you have a question?
I already know what this one is.
What is that one, do you think?
It's like when you try to fling it up and the ball goes in there.
Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's called ball and cup. I usually.
Could we try it?
If you can stay right there, that would be fine.
I want going
I would probably hit myself in the head.
I played with it.
Oh, I've done those before. They're hard. I have a giraffe one, except it's a ring. You have to get around the giraffe's neck.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It's impossible.
So if I can have your attention for a minute, I want to tell you a little story about this little bowl over here. Okay? How many of you have one of these in your bedroom or in your bathroom? Anything? Anybody? Oop. What do you think it was or used for? If you brushed your hair, brush your daughter's hair, put that hair in the hair receiver, it's called. And when you had enough hair, you could make a bun, make your hair look much fuller. Now another thing I want to show you is if you had a husband or a child that passed away, you would clip a lock of their hair to preserve, to remember them by. So the pin that I have on is an original, and these are little curls clipped from a baby that passed away, and the mother wanted to have a remembrance of her baby. So she would wear that in a piece of what they called hair jewelry. And it's a little creepy, but that's how they remembered. You know, they didn't have pictures like we have today. They couldn't just look at their camera and say, there's my child. They would have this to remember them by. So, toys. I'm going to show you first it's actual hair. It is, yep.
Little birdies.
So these little birds
They look like
are
missiles.
porcelain, and I can't let you try them out, but I'll show you how they work. And they were invented during Revolutionary War. And the moms would give them to the kids. They'd get out of the house and run off some energy, and you'll know why they didn't want them in the house. So
My
kind of
mom would
shrill,
get
kind of
mad.
shrill. So mom would say, just a minute, let me put a little water in here, and then you take it outside.
It's a bird
It's
call.
a bird song.
Water.
And then these are
Ooh, they look
original
like marbles.
clay marbles from the Civil War. They made them out of clay. The Egyptians actually made marbles way back when, in Cleopatra's time, painted them. Eventually it evolved to the Germans coming up with porcelain marbles, and then the glass marbles as we know today. So on each end of the table we have a coffee grinder. You can grind some coffee because I think your next stop is over to see the soldiers, and those guys drink a lot of coffee.
Question?
So you can grind them, you can take the ball and cup out on the grass, stick away from your neighbor and try that out. And then the other thing you can try is the stereoscope. How many of you have a TV in your house?
I do.
Okay, 1860, no electricity, no TV. So you had this, and you hold it with your hand. You use the slide to put the photo at the right position until you can see it in 3D. They had 3D during 1860s. So take a look